My name is Kaitlin DeWulf. An elite education bought without a second thought. What this case comes down to is opportunity. Opportunity only a Hollywood celebrity could buy, and holding that celebrity accountable for using her privilege to buy it. Jewel Tom is a high school junior and the daughter of Mel Tom, the defendant in today's case, a Hollywood celeb who needs no introduction. Jewel is applying for colleges with the dreams of attending the University of California at Berkeley. Her mom is proud of her youngest daughter, but not proud enough. She needs more. Something is standing in the way of Jewel's path to the prestigious Berkeley, her less than prestigious resume. So Mel Tom sets up a meeting with Spencer Matthew, an admissions consultant known for getting the children of wealthy parents into schools they never could have gotten into, honestly. At that first meeting, she gets right to the point. She tells Spencer Matthew she's not concerned with morality, she just wants the best for her daughter. Now, this case is centered around the testimony of Spencer Matthew. He's the mastermind behind a large college admissions scam, a scam that Mel Tom participates in to benefit her daughter. We'll come back to the specifics of Mr. Matthews' involvement, but when you hear from him, I want you to listen closely about what he has to say about Jewel Tom. In evaluating what it would take to get her into Berkeley, he'll tell you his work was cut out for him. Jewel's grades were fine, but not good enough for Berkeley. Her standardized test scores definitely weren't going to cut it. And to make matters worse, she played no sports. At that first meeting, Mr. Matthew takes a look at Jewel's credentials and lays out his two-pronged approach for getting her into Berkeley. A higher standardized test score and a fake athletic profile, priced at $150,000. Without missing a beat, Mel Tom simply responds, "Will you take a check?" But she didn't just write one check that morning. She wrote two. One to Mr. Matthews' admissions consulting business for $10,000, and a second, a donation of $140,000 to a nonprofit run by Spencer Matthew, a nonprofit he admittedly uses as a shell for his operation to conceal the six-figure payments from his clients. Checks in hand that same morning, Spencer Matthew gets to work on making Jewel's dream a reality. And in early 2017, Jewel learns she got into her dream school of Berkeley, an elite education bought for Jewel without a second thought from her mother, the defendant, Mel Tom. But to fully understand what happened in this case, we have to go back and talk about where it all began, with Spencer Matthew. Mr. Matthew will explain to you his multi-million-dollar scheme to defraud by fabricating college admissions materials for high school students. He'll tell you how he founded Reach for the Stars, his admissions business, and a nonprofit called Front of the Classroom, which is that shell corporation we just talked about. While Reach for the Stars did some genuine admissions consulting, he'll tell you that legitimate side only accounted for 5% of his actual business. The other 95% came from helping wealthy parents, often celebrities like Mel Tom, get their children into elite universities by gaming the system. But Mr. Matthew will explain to you that this all came crashing down in 2019. Facing severe penalties for what he had done, he had the opportunity to enter into an agreement to plead guilty and help the government prosecute the people who were funding his enterprise, all of the parents who paid him to fabricate their children's college admissions materials. One of those clients was Mel Tom. And while you're going to hear from Mr. Matthew today, you're not just going to hear from him. You're going to see email communications between him and Mel Tom. You're going to see checks that Mel Tom wrote to Mr. Matthews' businesses. In January 2016, Mel Tom invited Spencer Matthew to her beachfront mansion, and that's where he laid out his plan for Jewel. He explained to Ms. Tom that he has two methods for gaming the system, but for students who need more help, he uses both methods, a hybrid approach at a premium price. And that's the approach he and Mel Tom agreed they would use to get Jewel into Berkeley. First, Jewel Tom needed a higher standardized test score. Spencer Matthew made this happen by having Ms. Tom register Jewel for a different standardized test. Jewel had already taken the PSAT and got a score of 1080, so a big score improvement would be more explainable with a different test. Next, Mr. Matthew had a psychiatrist write a letter to a testing facility falsifying Jewel's medical history so that she could get extra time on the test. The extra time itself was irrelevant, but it would move Jewel to a testing facility within Spencer Matthew's control. And the letter worked. Mr. Matthew was able to change Jewel's answers before submitting them to the testing center. Jewel's new and improved, but fabricated standardized test score was 1480 out of 1600, a score that Mel Tom showed Mr. Matthew with glee. And finally, Spencer Matthew turned Jewel into a golf star by bribing a head golf coach and falsifying Jewel's golf section on her resume. Mr. Matthew had to pay that golf coach more than usual because Jewel didn't know the difference between a 3-iron and a tire iron. He paid that golf coach $30,000 of Mel Tom's money. And now Jewel had become a golf star in the eyes of college admissions committees. In November 2016, Jewel submitted her college applications, and by spring, admissions letters were pouring in. Mel Tom was ecstatic by this, so ecstatic that she mailed Spencer Matthew a generous thank you package, $5,000 and a Berkeley hoodie in his size. The defendant, Mel Tom, has been charged with 1 count of honest services wire fraud for her email communications and participation in Spencer Matthew's fraudulent scheme. As the people, we bear the burden of proof in today's case, and we must prove to you that crime beyond a reasonable doubt. At the end of today's trial, I'll come back before you and I'll ask that you find Mel Tom guilty because she spent $155,000 to buy her daughter an elite education without a second thought.